If you're ever driving through Montana at night and you find yourself low on gas with no towns for miles, don't stop at the station that shows up out of nowhere. It doesn't want your money. It wants you. Before the stories, before the missing people, before the warning signs etched into rusted road signs that only show up when the fog is right, there was just a man named Daniel Whitaker, a man who believed in reason, in timing, in maps, a man who didn't believe in ghost stories, whispers, or haunted highways. At least, not until October 14th, 2019. That was the last night anyone saw Daniel alive. And this is where the story begins. Daniel Whitaker, 37 years old, a logistics driver based out of Spokane, Washington. Quiet, reliable, the kind of man who never missed a deadline, the kind who kept his socks folded, who still wore his wedding ring even 2 years after the divorce. He wasn't alone on this trip. He was joined by his niece, Haley Whitaker, 22 years old, a journalism student from Oregon State. Sharp, curious, and way too brave for her own good. She was tagging along for fall break, researching a blog series on forgotten towns in the American Northwest. And then there was Tommy Ruiz, 43, Daniel's co-worker and longtime friend. A mechanic turned co-driver, loud-mouthed, heavy-set, always cracking jokes, until he wasn't. 3 people. 1 truck. A standard route hauling generator parts from Spokane to Helena, Montana. Everything should have gone smoothly. But none of them knew that somewhere between Missoula and Raleigh, something had reopened, something that doesn't always exist. But when it does, it's hungry. Daniel's Kenworth W9990 rolled out just after sunrise. Clear skies, warm coffee. Haley had her camera, snapping photos of abandoned barns along I-90. Tommy had the aux cord and an obsession with 80s rock. They planned to reach Helena by nightfall, cut across Highway 93, and maybe stop in a little town called Dixon for snacks. Tommy joked about haunted roads, about skinwalkers in the mountains. Haley laughed. She loved weird legends, said Montana had the highest number of ghost town sightings in the U.S. Daniel rolled his eyes. To him, horror stories were just that, stories. But something changed the moment they turned off onto Highway 93. Something about the air, the silence, the strange static that crept into their radios and didn't leave. By 5:40 p.m., they passed a small roadside diner called Lone Elk Cafe. Haley wanted to stop, grab photos, maybe ask the locals about ghost stories. But Daniel wanted to stay on schedule. He was always on schedule. That's when Tommy spotted it. A handmade wooden sign nailed to a crooked pine tree, painted in fading red letters. Avoid the gas station. Listen for whispers. They all laughed. Tommy even pulled out his phone and joked, "Guess we're in a creepypasta now." But Haley kept staring at the sign. She zoomed in with her camera. The letters weren't faded paint. They were rust. Fresh rust, still dripping. Daniel tapped the gas. They didn't stop. Not then. As the sun dipped behind the hills, the highway grew darker. Too dark, even for rural Montana. The stars disappeared behind thick clouds, and a strange haze settled across the forest. Daniel checked the clock. 7:13 p.m. His GPS flickered. Lost signal. Nothing but the road ahead and a faint light in the distance. At first, they thought it was a house, but as they got closer, it became clear. A gas station. No brand, no name, just a weathered building with a faded red awning, and a flickering neon sign in the window. Open. But here's the thing. None of them remembered seeing it on the map. Haley had been tracking every turn, logging everything for her blog. She even pulled out the Montana highway guide she'd picked up earlier. There was no gas station listed on that stretch, not even an old one. Tommy shrugged. "Fuel's low anyway," he said. "Might as well top off." Haley hesitated. Her camera hung limp around her neck. She whispered, "It feels wrong." Daniel rolled the truck up to the pump. It clicked to a stop without a word. No numbers appeared on the screen. The pump nozzle was warm to the touch. Too warm. And then, the whispering began. He's almost here. He watches through the glass. Don't look in the mirror. Daniel spun around. Nothing. Tommy had already stepped out, stretching his legs, oblivious. Haley hadn't moved. She was frozen in the passenger seat, eyes wide, pupils dilated. And Daniel? Daniel heard something he would never forget. From inside the truck's radio, even though it was turned off, a voice spoke in a tone just like his own. You shouldn't have stopped. Daniel was the first to reach the door. The glass pane was cloudy, like breath on a mirror. The neon open sign above it flickered, buzzing with that electric sound you don't notice until you're standing in total silence. He hesitated. Something about the handle felt off. It was warm, not just from sunlight, but internally warm, like it had been gripped from the other side moments before. Haley stood a few feet back. She had her camera up, but didn't take any photos. Her hands trembled too much. Tommy, in typical Tommy fashion, was already halfway through the door muttering, "Damn place looks like it hasn't had a customer since Y2K." The bell above the door jingled, but the sound wasn't right. It didn't ring like metal on metal. It rang like something breathing. Inside, the gas station was dim. No music, no humming refrigerators, just rows of dusty shelves filled with items that hadn't been sold in decades. Cans of beans with labels from the 80s, candy bars that no longer existed, a cooler filled with bottled water, all with expiration dates from 2006. The strangest part? Everything was cold, too cold. Haley could see her breath, and yet the thermostat on the wall blinked. 72-degree wongs. That's when she saw it. A wall, just behind the checkout counter, covered in photographs, hundreds of them, Polaroids, film, some yellowed and curling with age. She moved closer. Each photo had a name written in faded ink. Some were marked with dates. Others just had one word. Lost. She flipped through a few. A young couple in 1970s clothes standing by a Mustang. A park ranger smiling next to a trailhead. A family of 4, all with their eyes scratched out. Then her fingers froze, because she saw a photo of Daniel. Same denim jacket, same beard, same truck in the background. Only, the photo was dated. October 15th, 2019. Tomorrow. Haley whispered, "Uncle Dan." Daniel turned and saw it too. He stared for a long time. "This has to be a prank," he said. But Haley knew better. She'd taken a picture of him earlier that day, in that jacket, by that truck, and she hadn't uploaded it anywhere. She pulled up her digital camera to check, and then she stopped, because the photo she took was gone. Then they heard it, a shuffle, not from the back, from beneath. Wood creaked underfoot. A soft scraping sound like fingernails on concrete rose from the floorboards. Tommy called out, "Hello? Anyone working here?" And that's when the attendant stepped into view. She, or it, emerged from a shadow behind the register. No footsteps, just presence. A woman, maybe in her 60s, skin pale like wax, eyes cloudy, too wide for her face. Her name tag said only, Grace. She didn't speak at first, just stared at each of them, one by one, with that fixed, corpse-like smile. Then, in a voice that sounded like it echoed through an empty church basement, she said, "He knows you're here." Daniel blinked. "Who knows we're here?" She didn't answer. She just raised one thin, shaking finger and pointed toward the back of the store, toward a mirror. A tall antique thing in a cracked wooden frame, covered in dust. It hadn't been there when they entered, and the reflection it cast was wrong. In the mirror, they could see the store, but not themselves. Instead, 3 other people stood in their place. Not doubles, not lookalikes. They were Rotting. Daniel, bloated and purple-faced. Tommy, mouth gaping in a silent scream. Haley, burned, blackened, her eyes missing. They staggered in place like puppets. Haley backed away from the mirror and whispered, "We're not supposed to be here." The attendant, Grace, finally spoke again. "The Whisperer sees what's coming. He always shows you the end." Daniel had heard enough. He grabbed Haley and yelled to Tommy, "Let's go, now." But Tommy didn't move. He was staring into the mirror, locked in place as if hypnotized. His voice trembled. "I can hear him," he said. "Behind the glass. They say your soul can leave your body if you stare too long into a place that doesn't reflect the truth." And in that gas station, nothing was telling the truth. In the cold stillness of that forgotten place, the gas station that shouldn't exist, 3 people stood on the edge of something they couldn't name. Something old, something aware. Daniel, Haley, and Tommy had come in search of fuel. What they found was a reflection of their own deaths, rotting versions of themselves standing behind a cracked antique mirror. The attendant, Grace, if that's what she really was, warned them. The Whisperer sees what's coming. But now, it's already here. Daniel stood rooted, eyes locked on the mirror. His breathing turned ragged. His mind raced. The version of him in the glass, bloated, waterlogged, eyes lifeless, looked exactly like him. Same jacket, same beard, same haunted expression. But its mouth was moving. Whispering. Daniel couldn't hear the words. He didn't want to. Haley pulled at his arm. "Uncle Dan, we need to go, now." But Tommy didn't budge. He was still staring into the glass, his lips moving silently, mirroring the version of himself in the reflection. Then, all at once, Tommy screamed. It wasn't a normal scream. It came from deep inside, animalistic, primal, raw. He clutched his head and dropped to his knees, panting like he couldn't breathe. Daniel finally moved, grabbing Haley and yanking her back toward the front door. But the door was no longer a door. In its place was a blank wall, no windows, no glass, just peeling red wallpaper lined with faint scratches. Haley pounded on it. "It was here. I saw the door. Uncle Dan, where is it?" Daniel turned in slow horror, scanning the gas station. Everything had changed. The candy shelves were gone. The coolers were gone. Even Grace, the waxen-faced attendant, had vanished. Now it was just them, the mirror, and something beneath the floor that was starting to move. Tommy stood up, but not like before. His posture was off, like his joints weren't bending the right way. His neck turned too far. His shoulders twitched like a marionette fighting its strings. And when he looked at Daniel, his eyes were bleeding. Thin lines of red trailing down his cheeks like tears. His voice was wrong, too. Guttural, echoed like it came from beneath him. "He's in me," Tommy whispered. "He's showing me everything." Daniel shouted, "Tommy, snap out of it." But Tommy only smiled, not his real smile, and said softly, "There's no leaving. He only opens the door when he's done with you." Then, Tommy turned and walked toward the back of the store, toward the mirror. Daniel breaks the mirror. Daniel didn't wait. He grabbed a rusted crowbar that had been resting against the counter. Though he couldn't remember seeing it there before, he raised it. Haley screamed, "What are you doing?" And with a grunt of rage, Daniel swung it into the mirror. The glass didn't shatter like glass. It cracked like bone. A low moan echoed through the store, not from the mirror, from the walls themselves. Something deep inside the building woke up, something that didn't like being disturbed. Daniel staggered back as blood, yes, blood, oozed from the cracks in the mirror, dripping onto the floor in slow, thick drops. The reflection was gone. No more dead versions of themselves. Now the glass just showed static, like an old television trying to pick up a signal from somewhere else. Somewhere alive. A click. That's all they heard? Then the front wall shifted, almost like the building side, and the door appeared again. But it wasn't the same. The neon open sign now read, "Stay." Daniel moved cautiously, reaching for the door handle. He didn't want to, but it was the only way out. He turned it. It opened. What they saw on the other side wasn't Montana. What was outside? They stood on a narrow road, shrouded in mist. The forest was gone. The sky, gone. Above them stretched a swirling void, charcoal gray clouds churning in circles like water spiraling down a drain. The ground beneath their feet looked like asphalt, but it was soft. Too soft. Haley touched it and yanked her hand back, whispering, "It's skin." The road wound forward through the mist, and far in the distance, they could see another gas station. Same shape, same flickering light. Another copy, or maybe the original. Daniel slammed the door shut. "No, we're not going that way." He turned back, breathing hard. "Whatever this place is, we have to finish it here." Haley nodded, but behind her, they heard Tommy begin to laugh. He wasn't laughing like before. It was a wet, choking laugh, like he was trying to cough something up, but laughing through the pain. His face was changing. His skin sagged, his lips had split, his teeth looked cracked as though something larger had tried to fit inside him and hadn't quite succeeded. He said, "He's watching through the cracks." And then he collapsed. Haley screamed. Daniel rushed to him, but there was nothing to do. Tommy's body, deflated, as if the bones had been removed. He was still breathing. Still alive. But whatever was Tommy was gone. Haley pointed. "We haven't checked the back. That room. There might be another way." They ran. The back door was rotted, hanging off its hinges. Daniel pushed it open with his shoulder. Inside, darkness. But not just darkness. Cold. A cold that settled deep in the bones and hummed in the teeth. The air smelled like mildew, rust, and blood. Haley flicked on her phone light, and they saw it. A shape, curled in the corner. A woman. She was maybe in her 20s. Her clothes were torn, covered in dried blood. Her skin was pale, but she was breathing, barely. She looked up at them slowly, eyes wide and unfocused. Then she whispered, "Don't touch me. He's still here." Daniel crouched. "What's your name?" She hesitated. "Becca." Haley asked, "How long have you been here?" Becca shook her head slowly. "I don't know. The clocks don't work here. They tick backwards." Haley shined the light around the room. There was a spiral carved into the walls. Dozens of them, all identical. Becca saw her looking and said, "Those are his paths. He walks in circles, he never leaves." Daniel asked, "Who is he? Who's the whisperer?" Becca cried. And then the whispering returned, louder this time, everywhere, all at once. The walls began to flex. Not shake, flex, like lungs. The light bulbs overhead pulsed with red light. The spiral symbols on the walls began to rotate, not physically but in their vision. Optical illusions. That weren't illusions. Daniel grabbed Becca and pulled her up. "We're getting out, now!" Haley screamed as a section of the wall peeled open, revealing a staircase leading down. Stone steps, dripping water, the smell of dirt and sulfur. A voice whispered from the darkness, "You broke the glass. Now he can come through." Where the gas station's foundation gives way to something far older, they'll see what's been whispering, and what happens to those who listen too long. Tommy isn't the only one who changed, and one of them won't survive the next hour. This is no longer about escaping. It's about surviving what's been let in. Stay tuned for part 2 of The Whispering Gas Station in Montana, and remember, If you ever see a mirror that doesn't reflect you back, look away. Thanks for listening to this terrifying journey into the unknown. If you enjoyed the story, be sure to like, subscribe, and tap the bell so you don't miss what comes next, because we're just getting started. And remember, some doors should never be opened. Good night, and don't listen to the whispers.